Welcome to Interesting Express. Have you ever walked through a very dense forest? One of those places where the trees are so tall that the sun barely filters through and everything is silent. Well, almost everything. You can hear the wind, a bird, your footsteps. Imagine that you suddenly see a footprint, but not just any footprint. It's enormous, like a human foot, but much bigger, wider. Or worse, maybe you hear a really strange sound in the distance, a long, deep, powerful scream that chills you to the bone. Those are the sparks that fuel one of the most fascinating legends, that of these giant, humanoid creatures, covered in hair, who supposedly live in the wildest corners of the planet. What are they? Are they unknown animals, or just stories? Today, we're going to dive right into this mystery. The most famous is Bigfoot. Its fame exploded in the United States in the 1950s because of some gigantic footprints in California. But the story is much older. The indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest coast were already talking about the Sasquatch. It comes from Saskats, a word in the Hulkamalem language that means wild man or hairy man of the forest. These weren't monster stories, they were part of their world. They described these beings as part of nature, powerful and elusive entities. Sometimes as silent guardians, other times simply as different beings who preferred to stay away from people. But what do they look like? The descriptions are pretty similar. The first thing is their impressive size. We're talking about creatures between 2 and 3 meters tall. 3 meters, that's insane. Imagine running into something like that. Not just tall, but also very burly, solidly built. We're talking about weights that could go over 200, even 300 kilos. And their appearance, hairy, completely covered in thick fur, usually dark, though sometimes people say it's reddish or gray. You can see the muscles, broad shoulders, an impression of raw strength. The arms are really long, almost reaching down to the knees. The head looks like it's set right into the shoulders, with a very short, thick neck. A sloping forehead and small, sunken eyes. Sometimes they say the eyes glow in the dark, and I'm forgetting something almost everyone mentions, the smell. Phew, yeah, the smell. They say it's really strong, very unpleasant. They compare it to a dead animal or rotting garbage, something you notice before you even see them. And they walk on 2 legs, like us. They're bipeds, although people describe the way they walk differently. Sometimes they're agile, other times more clumsy. They don't live just anywhere. They prefer dense forests, mountains, remote places with lots of vegetation near water. That's why most of the sightings are in the Pacific Northwest of North America. There, you'll find huge stretches of almost untouched forests where something like that could hide. Over the years, thousands of reports have been collected from people who say they've seen them, but the most common evidence is the footprints. Huge, up to 50 centimeters long and wide, with 5 toes clearly marked. But that's the thing. Are they real? That's the big problem. The authenticity of many is very questionable. It's known that some people have made molds to create fake footprints as a joke or to become famous. And then there's the confusion with tracks from large animals. A bear, for example, if it steps in mud, the print gets distorted and looks bigger. The whole footprint thing is a mess. But there's something that always comes up in the conversation. The Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967 in Bluff Creek, California. It's less than a minute long. It's an old, shaky film. You see a tall, dark, hairy figure walking upright with a very distinctive arm swing. And at one point, it turns its head as if it's been caught off guard, then quickly walks away and disappears among the trees. So what's the deal with that footage? It's still at the center of the debate today. Experts have analyzed it thousands of times. Some say that the movement of the muscles under the hair and the way it walks would be really hard to fake with a costume, especially back then. That the proportions aren't human, but others aren't so sure. They say the quality is terrible and you can't rule out a trick or a well-made costume. Decades of analysis and it's still a mystery. It hasn't been proven fake, but it hasn't been proven real either. A total mystery. And then there are the sounds. There are supposedly recordings from sightings that are downright chilling. Long, powerful howls that don't sound like any known animal. Sometimes people say it's like a guttural language with weird clicks and whistles. There are even researchers who talk about wood knocks, loud knocks on trees. But again, the question, are they from an unknown creature, or are they bears, cougars, wolves, or just misinterpreted forest noises? And what about physical evidence, like hair or something? That's the other big issue. Physical samples are what science needs to confirm something. So, what did they find? Here's the most disappointing part for believers. Most of the DNA analyses of those samples yielded known results. They were bear hair, deer, dog, cow, or even human contamination. One study analyzed more than 30 samples of supposed rare hominids, and all of them were from known animals. Bigfoot DNA still hasn't turned up. Science doesn't have any conclusive physical evidence. But this idea of a hairy wild man isn't just from North America, it's an almost universal phenomenon. The most famous relative is the Yeti, the abominable snowman of the Himalayas. The descriptions are very similar to Sasquatch: big, hairy, walks on two legs, elusive, but adapted to extreme cold. And there are more. In Australia, there's the yowie. In the swamps of Florida, there's the skunk ape, famous for its unbearable smell. In Russia or Central Asia, there are the almas or almasti, described as being more like primitive humans. In Indonesia, there's the orang pendek, which means short man. And here in South America, there are legends too. In the Amazon, there's the mapinguari. It's an incredible gallery. It's like the idea is everywhere. Given how persistent the legend is, even though there's no clear evidence, the question is, what explanation is there? The favorite theory among believers is that it's a real species that science hasn't discovered yet. And that's where the theory of the Gigantopithecus comes in. This was a giant ape, the largest that ever existed. It lived in Asia hundreds of thousands of years ago and stood about 3 meters tall. The theory is that some of them crossed over Bering, made it to America, and survived by hiding. It sounds like something out of a movie, but scientists see problems with it. First, Gigantopithecus went extinct a long time ago. Second, no fossils of it have ever been found in America. And third, how could such a huge creature live without leaving more traces than just footprints and rare sightings? No bones, nothing. That's why the more skeptical explanations go in a different direction. The most common one is confusion, mainly with bears. Black or brown bears are big, hairy, live right there, and stand up on 2 legs. From a distance, in low light, it's easy to get confused. Another factor is pranks and hoaxes. There are confirmed cases of people who faked footprints or dressed up in costumes. Those hoaxes took away a lot of credibility from serious research and left a more symbolic door open. And what if Bigfoot is something more? What if it represents an archetype of the wild man, of the nature we've lost? It's like we need to believe that there are still mysteries out there. Maybe in such a thoroughly explored world, we need to believe there are wild corners that escape us, that the wild is still out there watching us. In the end, Bigfoot and its relatives keep walking around, whether in real forests or in the forests of our imagination. They remain a huge mystery. One thing's for sure, the search goes on. People are going to keep looking into the woods with that mix of fear and fascination, hoping to see something strange, to hear that howl. Could it be that deep down we need these mysteries so the world doesn't lose all its magic? That's a good question. Meanwhile, the legend of Bigfoot is still out there, leaving those giant footprints, not just on the ground, but also on our curiosity and our sense of wonder. Until next time.